Yes, sir.
Governor, can I ask you about redistricting?
Sure.
You had proposed an original set of maps. We're not quite sure who drew them. And now you're going to be drawing a new set of congressional maps. Can you give us an idea of who's going to draw them, what sort of record retention you're going to have, and how you're going to make sure that you avoid intentionally drawing districts that favor or disfavor incumbents or political parties?
So I thought that, so everything's been done by our legal office and attorneys and all that from the very beginning of any proposals that they've had. The letter yesterday, I mean, I thought that my legal office had been working with the House and Senate to try to kind of have a compromise that everyone would agree on. So I think that what they'll produce will be something that will be acceptable to folks, and obviously would get my signature if we're proposing it. It will, though, have North Florida drawn in a race-neutral manner. I mean, we are not going to have a 200-mile gerrymander that divvies up people based on the color of their skin. That is wrong. That is not the way we've governed in the state of Florida. And so that will be that. And obviously that will be litigated. But I can tell you the original district would absolutely have been litigated. And if you look at what's happened in the U.S. Supreme Court over the last 4 or 5 years, you know, that would be the case. And so those, you have attorneys, you have folks that know the law, and yes, they're going to follow every provision of the Constitution and statutory law. That involves, of course, the Florida Constitution, and that it involves certain provisions of federal law, which they are going to abide by.
A real quick follow-up. Are you going to have certain policies and procedures to ensure that there's a record created to show what your intent was or what the intent is in drawing these districts?
So they're going to I mean, I don't know who's going to do it, but I mean, the people that were involved will go and testify in front of the legislature about the product that was created. And so, you know, this is kind of my first foray, and I don't really know how all this stuff works, but I do know that you look at, you know, how many counties are being split, how many cities, what's the compactness and all that. So they're going to be able to do that. And I think that they're going to be able to do a map, from what they've been telling me, that will be have less county and city splits than what the Senate had originally done, and have better compact scores. So that, I think, is what'll be make sense. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, I just wanted to ask on redistricting as well. Do you consider the legislative map to also be unconstitutional, considering it was created with the same legal framework as the congressional map? Which
so here's what I think. I think if you remember that, there was an agreement amongst all parties, and I was in Congress at the time, so they changed my district, but there was an agreement that the Florida Constitution required racial gerrymandering. And so no one really raised the issue of, wait a minute, you have a 200-mile district that's going in and out and separating on that basis. Is that consistent with the federal Constitution? That issue was never raised. What's happened since then? Cooper versus Harris in 2017 said the only time you use race effectively is complying with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which requires a compact majority-minority population. Don't go from Jacksonville all the way to rural northwest Florida. And so that was the issue. And then there have been many other decisions at the Supreme Court. Most recently, they struck down the Wisconsin racial gerrymandering that they did for their state legislative maps, and so, or effectively did that. They put it on hold, so you can see where they're doing it. So yes, I think if someone brought a lawsuit in, say, 2019, challenging that as an illicit racial gerrymander, I do think it would have succeeded. At the same time, when you're doing this redistricting stuff, when you're already towards the end of the decade, is a private plaintiff going to want to sink hundreds of thousands of dollars into making a legal challenge that may not even make a difference, given that new maps were coming? But it was never challenged on those grounds, and there has never been a district of that length and that shape that has been justifiable under the federal Constitution. They have never upheld it based on using race. The only time the crazy districts get upheld is when they're upheld on the basis of partisan gerrymandering, which the court said is not justiciable under the federal Constitution. Well, guess what? You're not allowed to partisan gerrymander under Florida's Constitution. So the only thing you could be doing is using racial gerrymandering.
Do you also consider the legislative map to be unconstitutional, since it was created with the same legal framework of the map that you say?
Yeah, but there was never a district in those, in either the House or Senate, that rivaled the Congressional District 5 map. I mean, that was a unique thing. and it was something that was really a legacy from prior decades. So I don't think that they're the same. I'm not saying that someone could potentially raise challenges. I mean, look, I think this whole area of the law is very much in flux, and I think it's moving in one direction very clearly. But there was nothing on any of those maps that raise it. At the same time, I don't have a role in the legislative maps. They pass their maps and they send it to the state Supreme Court. That's what the Florida Constitution requires. Florida law requires with congressional that it get the governor's signature, and so we laid our criteria of what we're going to be looking for to be able to get our signature. But clearly, I think that under how the current map is with that district, that is an aberration in terms of what's ever been ruled acceptable against a federal constitutional challenge. And so I think you're going to have litigation either way. If you had kept that in place, you'd get litigation from one side. If you take it out, you'll get litigation from the other. But I think the odds are higher that a map that is race neutral there will be approved, and I think it's more likely that one that did that kind of drawing, intentional drawing, would be ruled to violate the 14th Amendment. Okay, thanks everybody. God bless.